but you got the Phillies that are showing some sustainability. You got the Braves as well. You got some disappointing teams, so we'll break it down. It's always good to catch up with our good friend from USA Today, Steve Gardner, joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. It feels like I haven't spoken to you in 3 baseball seasons.
It does. But we're here now. We can catch up on everything we missed.
Well, and there's a lot to catch up on. All right, let's stick with the NL East at the top in the Philadelphia Phillies. And again, we listen. We've been talking about this team now since opening day. They've now won 4 straight. They're winning series, which I think is very important. They're coming off a series win against the Washington Nationals. We see them in a quickie little set against the Baltimore O's as well. They take 2 against them. Now you got the Pirates lingering as well. Nola goes 7 strong again. Williams goes deep, and they put up 4 against Baltimore. I still think, as well as Nola's pitched, as well as Eflin has pitched, I still think they might need another arm. They have to solidify the bullpen. So, first off, what do you think of, what potential moves do you foresee out there for the Philadelphia Phillies come the trade deadline? Do you think they're going to try to go after another arm, whether it's Hamels or Happ? And do you think they're going to try to solidify the bullpen and maybe go after a guy like Hand in San Diego?
Yeah, I think as we get further into the season and the postseason looks like it's a definite or more of a definite possibility, that's where this team can improve. And although the pitching has been pretty good so far this season, you always need that extra bullpen arm. And the one thing is that the closer situation has been so fluid throughout the course of the season that it would be nice to get somebody to get in there who you could just say, you're the guy, and not have to worry about it. And just about every time that person closes the door. So, yes, that is a prime concern. Another starting pitcher would not be bad. I think, though, a return to earlier season form by Jake Arrieta would be almost like getting one of those top pitchers at the deadline.
Well, I was going to ask you about Arrieta in a second, but first, what's the likelihood that the Phillies make a move to try to bring back Cole Hamels?
I think there's obviously interest. I mean, the history certainly would welcome that. Both sides, I think, would welcome that, and so his ties with the area still. I think that's not a bad idea. Certainly, getting a left-hander in there, that would help as well. And that experience. I think that's the other thing. We talk about this team for the most part, outside of Arrieta and Carlos Santana, really relatively young and inexperienced, especially when it comes to the postseason. So to get somebody who's been there, done that, and has a ring, I think would be valuable, not only from what he could do on the field, but also in the clubhouse.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a couple other teams. Obviously the Yankees, but also the Atlanta Braves and the Seattle Mariners as well. The same, I think, could also be said about Happ. I mean, those are some of the names floating out there. You mentioned the bullpen. All right, listen, good segue into Arrieta, because I vocally came out and said, listen, you have to go out and you have to sign him. I didn't care at the time about the money per season. I was a little more concerned about the years. But he has, let's be honest, he just hasn't pitched well. I mean, is this age? Is this fatigue? Is his arm tired? Is it just getting acclimated to a different ballpark? I mean, the guy's pitched in the NL. I just can't figure him out. He's too inconsistent.
Exactly, and I think it's one of the things where, and we've talked a little bit about this before, the strikeout rate is down, and so therefore when you're not you're striking out 6 batters per 9 innings, when over the course of your career you're up around 8 or 9, then you're putting more balls in play, which leaves it up to chance. It leaves it up to the fielding, and Jake Arrieta's had more unearned runs than any other pitcher in all of baseball. So, I mean, part of that may be on him, part of that's on the defense, and then, you've got things, when the ball gets put in play, then that throws so many more variables into the mix. And, I think while part of it is Arrieta and his inability to get the strikeouts and come up with the big innings, and be able to go deep into games, he's not averaging, but 5 or 6 innings per start. That's what makes him less effective than the Jake Arrieta that we saw even earlier in this season. So I think that's one of the things. He's got to be a little bit more economical. He's got to hit his spots a little bit better, and frankly, the Phillies have to play better defense behind him, because once that starts to get off track, then I think things have a tendency to snowball.
Listen, the numbers are ugly though. 3-year, $75 million deal, 5-6. He's 5-6 and a 3.5 ERA. I mean, But listen, I understand what you're saying. It's mediocre at best. But if you got something out of him in the second half, as you alluded to, that's almost like acquiring a pitcher at the deadline.
Yeah, it sure is, and you know that when he's right and when he is at the peak of his powers, as we saw during the Cy Young year a couple of years ago, he could be very, very good. And that I still think, at age 32, that he can get back to that, but it's going to take a little bit of work.
Are the Washington Nationals the most disappointing team in baseball, at least the first half of the season?
I have to think so, especially this last stretch that they've been. What is it? Since the Washington Capitals won the Stanley Cup, the Nats were in first place. Then they have the worst record of any team in the National League.
Steve, it's the Washington Championship curse.
Obviously, blame it on somebody else or something else, not the poor play on the field or my goodness, the starting pitcher.
How about Harper? He's had a horrible year.
Yeah, it's just he's still hitting home runs. He's still taking a lot of walks, but everything else, you can't just be that 3 true outcome guy and be an MVP candidate and be the guy that your team needs basically to have him put the team on his shoulders and carry them. And no, he's not being that guy. He's not hustling sometimes, and you wonder if maybe he's not completely focused. I don't know. Coming into the last year of his contract, I think one of the things we will find out, Rich, is the Nationals had a team meeting after that loss yesterday, and I don't put a whole lot of stock a lot of times in when people say, "Oh, well, they need to refocus themselves and they need to want to win more." Players always want to win. They can't just automatically up their performance just because they want to or because they're going into a contract year or what else. These guys are professionals. They just all need to be able to not have those mental lapses and things and getting thrown out on the bases and all of those types of things. That's what I think the team meeting may help them do. And, Harper's got to lead by example. Scherzer, I think, was the ringleader in that team meeting. He always leads by example. And I think the rest of the team kind of needs to get the kick in the butt, and maybe that's what that team meeting does. Like I said, I don't put a whole lot of faith into those soft factors, but in this case, I think the Nationals need to have a turning point somewhere, and maybe that's it.
Now, here's a couple things. You're going against Boston. You get swept. There's no shame in that. But you're losing series to the Phillies. You dropped a quick 2-game set against Tampa Bay. Now, you get some gimmies with Miami, Pittsburgh, and the Mets. Now, two points I want to bring up. First of all, and I know you probably know exactly where I'm going with this. Do you think if they really fall out of playoff contention, do you think they would even consider trading Harper?
No, I don't. I think because they still have some designs on being able to re-sign him. And I think if you traded him, it's really hard, even if you say it's for the good of the franchise, I think it's really hard to be able to put the genie back in the bottle in that regard. So I think they're going to be at least within striking distance, and you have to make that call. If you're trading a guy like Harper, you've got to make that call July 31st with 2 months left to go in the season. I don't think anything will be settled for the Nationals. Even if they sit 7 games back where they are now, I still think that the feeling internally is they're going to be able to make a run and will be able to make a run. So all the talk about trading Harper and trying to get something, I just think that's speculation because things are going poorly. The Nationals could easily, as you mentioned, with the teams that they face coming up, go on a 12-2 roll and be back into the thick of the race and in no time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's just a little idle speculation because things are going so poorly now.
Yeah, and listen, they're a streaky team. They were at one point in April 7-16 during a 23-game stretch. 22-6 in May, and now you got the 16 out of the last 22 or so that they've lost. And I'll tell you this, before we look at the AL, you just wonder, would having Dusty Baker there as manager, would that have made any difference this first half of the season?
I wonder. I was not a big fan of making the managerial change because that's one of the things that Dusty had as a player's manager. He always seemed to have the calming influence on the clubhouse, and again, some of these soft factors. But at least in talking to the players, they all respected and revered Dusty, and when he had something to say, they listened to him. And I wonder, to try and just blow all of that up, you run the risk of, having to gel again that clubhouse chemistry. And I do wonder. And to tell you the truth, I think Dusty Baker probably could have had this team play a little bit better. They were never out of first place by more than a couple of games during his entire career there.
Yeah. Last one before I let you get out of here. You look over in the AL. Yankees just put Torres on the 10-day deal with that hit flexor, who's been outstanding this year. Stanton's starting to hit a little bit. Aside from Boston, aside from the Yankees, and then, of course, with the Houston Astros, how, I guess I can say, pleasantly surprised are you with how well the Seattle Mariners are played this year?
Yeah, I'm frankly, I think as big of a disappointment that the Nationals have been in the National League, I think the Mariners have been the biggest surprise in the American League. And the fact that they could have Robinson Cano be lost for half of the season and still basically kick it in when they lost him, that's pretty amazing to me as well. So, I mean, this is a team that has, gone out and used some of that savings from Cano's suspension to get a Denard Span, and bolster the bullpen and do some things to make the team a little bit better. I think that shows a lot of moxie for the front office, and for a team that has not been to the playoffs for an awful long time. I think they have the longest drought of any team in the majors not going to the playoffs. It's a great thing to see for baseball and especially for Mariners fans.
Yeah, I agree. It's fun to watch. All right, trade deadline right around the corner, midway point of the season. Finally, it's good to catch up. I know Josh has done a great job with the spots with you as well, so I always appreciate you coming on every week. We will talk next week. Did you at least get to barbecue a little bit yesterday?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I got to spend some time with my family. Good. And we had a little mini reunion with some cousins and had a great time and cooked out.
You didn't watch any Baltimore O's baseball, did you?
Yeah, we did, actually. We did have that on the TV outside, and caught a little bit of that because, I just can't break away from baseball all the way, Rich.
All right, Steve. Hey, always good to chat, my friend. Have a great weekend. We'll talk next week. Always appreciate a couple moments.
Take care.
All right, you got it. Steve Gardner does a great job covering baseball for USA Today.